Welcome to today's deep dive. If you are listening to this, chances are you spend, well, a pretty significant portion of your waking life navigating the complex and sometimes infuriating dynamic of a team.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, maybe you're leading a project, prepping for a quarterly review, or just trying to figure out why your department's weekly sync always derails.
Right into an argument.
Exactly.
Like,
Whatever your context, you already know that putting highly capable, intelligent people into a room together does not automatically create a highly capable team. Actually, sometimes it creates the exact
it
opposite.
really does.
So today, our mission is to explore the mechanics of how teams actually evolve. We want to help you understand exactly why your specific workplace group is thriving, just barely surviving, or frankly, driving you crazy.
It's a dynamic that corporate managers and even professional sports coaches struggle
Yeah.
to master. And I think the core issue is usually this assumption that a great team can just be assembled, you know?
Or bot.
Right, like assembling an all-star roster. Exactly. You acquire the best talent, put them on the same team, and just expect instant synergy. But the reality is that high-performing teams have to be painstakingly built. They require a leader who knows exactly when to change their management style to match the team's their current level of maturity.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because most of you listening have probably sat through some leadership seminar that mentions the classic stages of team development: form, storm, norm, perform.
Right. Business 101.
Yeah, Business 101. But what we are looking at today isn't a sanitized corporate textbook. Our source material is an internal training document called Leading Work Teams, and it's specifically from the Supervisory Skills Development Program of PBM.
Which is foo biomining.
Yes, Fu Biomining.
And that context is what makes this document so uniquely valuable. In a standard office environment, if a team is dysfunctional, you might miss a deadline.
Or lose a client.
Right, but in a copper and gold mining operation, you're dealing with heavy machinery, hazardous environments, extreme logistics. Exactly, explosives. A communication breakdown isn't an inconvenience there. It can be a catastrophic safety incident. So this manual strips away all the usual corporate fluff because it approaches team dynamics with a literal sense of survival.
When your storming phase involves people operating explosives, the leadership advice has to be incredibly sharp. And this manual treats a team not as a static org chart, but as a living, breathing organism that grows up.
It really does.
But before we get into the life cycle of that organism, the text establishes a baseline. It gives some very visceral descriptions of what ineffective teams look like, and it goes way beyond just missing KPIs.
Oh, yeah.
It calls out hostility, constant infighting, people withdrawing from the group, and a spirit so low that individuals are literally embarrassed to be a member.
Mhm.
We've all been on a project like that, right? Where you avoid eye contact in the hallway.
We definitely have.
Mhm.
And while the arguments and the poor output are the visible symptoms, the manual highlights a much more alarming root cause.
Which is what?
Well, it points out that in an ineffective team, members suffer from low self-esteem. They feel genuinely insecure. It actually uses the phrase personal danger.
Wow. Personal danger.
Yeah, and in a mining context, that danger is literal. You might get physically hurt. But translate that to an office setting, psychological danger is just as paralyzing. If you feel like your peers are going to throw you under the bus at the next meeting, you stop sharing ideas.
You start taking calculated risks.
Exactly. And the team's output just stagnates entirely.
So that is the toxic baseline. The ideal state, obviously, is the opposite. The text says an effective team handles emergencies without too much fuss or drama.
Which is a great way to put it.
Yeah, they have genuine loyalty, they incorporate an element of fun, and they can fiercely disagree with each other without it ever getting personal.
Right.
But how do you actually measure the gap between that toxic reality and this ideal state?
What's fascinating here is how the document introduces a framework called the dimensions of team performance.
Oh.
It argues most leaders fail because they treat performance as a single metric. But in reality, performance is split into two constantly interacting halves. First, you have the task dimension.
The what of the job?
Yes, getting the work done, completing milestones, hitting targets, extracting the ore.
So the task is the bottom line, the deliverable.
Precisely. But the second, equally important half is the process dimension. This is the how. How does the team actually work together to achieve those tasks?
Are they communicating transparently?
Right. Are they using everyone's diverse skills efficiently? Are they resolving conflicts quickly? Or are resentments just simmering beneath the surface?
I really want you, the listener, to hold on to this task versus process framework. Think about your own team. It is entirely possible to be acing the task dimension,
Mhm.
hitting all your quarterly targets, but completely failing the process dimension because the environment is miserable.
And turnover is high.
Right. Everyone's working in silos. And according to this PBM blueprint, if your process is broken, your task success is living on borrowed time, it will eventually collapse.
It's a very dangerous, albeit common, imbalance. Many leaders are promoted because they are excellent at the task.
They're great individual contributors.
Exactly. But when they become supervisors, they ignore the process because it feels abstract or messy. To fix a broken process, you have to recognize that a team develops over time. As we mentioned, it's a living organism.
Right. Let's dive into that core analogy. The manual maps the standard form, storm, norm, perform stages to human life stages. Baby, child, teenager, and adult. Stage 1 is the form stage, the baby.
And just like a human baby, a newly formed team or team handed a massive, unfamiliar project is incredibly vulnerable.
And highly dependent. The text notes that at this stage, the team has a very low level of competency regarding the specific work. People are internally asking, who am I in this group, and what is my expected role?
They'll even say things overtly like, we have never done this before, we don't know what to do.
They're essentially a blank slate.
Which brings us to the leadership strategy required here. In a lot of modern business discourse, the trend is to heavily promote servant leadership, being a hands-off facilitator from day one.
Right. Empower the team.
But the PBM manual is explicitly counter to that trend. It states that in the forming stage, the team actually wants and requires an autocratic style.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate here. Autocratic.
I know how it sounds.
If a manager walks into a modern tech company today and announces an autocratic approach, they are going to trigger a mass exodus. How does the manual justify that without telling leaders to just act like dictators?
It's a crucial distinction. Being autocratic in this context does not mean being a tyrant. It means centralizing authority to eliminate ambiguity.
Oh, I see.
If the team is a baby, leaving them in a room to self-organize and figure out their own strategy is negligent. In high-stakes environments like a mine, ambiguity leads to injury. So the supervisor must take a heavily hands-on approach.
Direct verbal and written instructions.
Exactly. Establish the immediate goals. The communication flow is almost entirely one way, from the supervisor down to the individuals. The leader manages both the task and the process because the team lacks the capacity to manage either.
That makes a lot of sense when you frame it around ambiguity. They don't need a brainstorming session. They need a roadmap. But babies don't stay babies forever. They learn to walk, they get some agency, and then they throw tantrums.
They certainly do.
That brings us to stage 2, storm, the child stage. And this is traditionally where teams completely fall apart.
The defining characteristic of the storming stage is a massive, frustrating gap. The team is gaining the confidence to try things on their own, but they still drastically lack the actual skills to execute without direction.
The honeymoon phase is over.
Yes, the reality of the hard work is setting in.
The manual paints a highly chaotic picture here. This is where the process dimension completely shatters. Conflict and infighting erupt. You see intense power struggles over values and working styles.
Actively challenging the leader's authority.
Right. Members start saying things like, who is actually responsible for what? Or the classic toddler meltdown phrase, I have had enough of this place.
It's the terrible twos translated to the workplace. Disillusionment sets in. Because the process is so chaotic, the task performance usually plummets during this stage. People are spending more energy navigating interpersonal friction than actually doing the work.
Some try to dominate, while others will completely withdraw to avoid the crossfire.
Exactly.
So if I'm a leader and my team is in the middle of a full-blown storming phase, my instinct might be to put my foot down harder, be more autocratic. How does a leader manage this without just firing everyone?
If you double down on being autocratic during the storming phase, you will break the team. The child is trying to exert independence. Crushing that independence causes permanent resentment.
So you have to transition.
You still can't be completely hands-off.
Yeah.
You have to constantly clarify the boundaries, much like repeating basic rules to a toddler. But tactically, the leader has to actively intervene in the process.
What does that look like practically?
The manual advises specifically breaking up cliques and factions. If two people are constantly reinforcing negative behavior, you separate their tasks. More importantly, you force the team to communicate.
Make them talk.
Hold regular meetings where the supervisor acts as the hub of the wheel. The members might not want to talk to each other, but they have to talk to the leader, and the leader starts facilitating two-way communication.
And there's that vital piece of psychological advice from the text here, right?
Yes. During the storming phase, the leader must actively point out even the slightest, most incremental improvements.
Because morale is in the basement?
Exactly. When a team is storming, they feel like they're failing. They're frustrated with themselves.
Hmm.
By celebrating a tiny win on the task side, the leader provides the psychological safety required to keep them engaged in fixing the process.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Let's assume the leader navigates the storm successfully. The cliques are breaking up, communication is flowing better, and we enter stage 3. Norm. The teenager stage.
A pivotal phase.
The teenager has the intellectual and physical ability to survive in the world. The team is finally competent at the task. But, just like a real teenager, they lack full emotional maturity. They desperately want to be independent, but they are constantly seeking validation.
That seeking of validation is the hallmark of the norming phase. The open hostility dies down, and a fragile sense of harmony emerges. People finally start to respect each other's talents. Task performance is rising steadily.
But because their competence is new, they're insecure about their autonomy.
Right. You will hear them constantly checking in. How does this look? Or can we get you to check this over for us? They know the work is good, but they are looking for that parental nod of approval before they finalize it.
It's like when a highly experienced graphic designer sends over a draft and asks, "Is this font okay?" They know the font is perfect. They just want you to confirm it so they don't feel entirely exposed.
Exactly.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, how does the PBM manual advise a leader to handle a team of highly capable but validation-hungry teenagers?
This is where the most significant pivot in leadership style must occur. Up until now, the leader has been heavily managing the task. In the norming stage, the leader must intentionally step back from day-to-day task management and focus almost exclusively on cementing the process.
The team knows what to do. What they need now is an unwritten social contract that dictates how they operate together.
Yes. The supervisor needs to shift to a participative style, involving the group in making decisions, actively asking for their opinions, and establishing clear group norms.
I love the specific examples the text gives for these norms. Because we are talking about a mining operation, these aren't fluffy, abstract mission statements like "we value synergy."
No, highly specific behavioral rules.
Things like, "we turn up for work on time. If someone needs help, we don't wait to be told to step in, and notably, we don't steal on this shift."
That last example really grounds the reality of what a norm actually is. Establishing norms isn't about fostering warm feelings. It's about creating a localized culture that governs behavior when the supervisor is completely out of the room. Corporate policy might say, don't steal. But when we don't steal becomes a team norm, it is enforced by peer pressure, which is infinitely more powerful.
In this stage, the leader facilitates the creation of these rules with the team to build a fierce sense of pride in the team's specific identity.
Exactly. Even though the leader still technically reserves the right to make final overriding decisions.
Which perfectly sets the stage for the final evolution. Stage 4, perform. The adult. This is the holy grail of management. This is what every supervisor is aiming for.
And an adult team is quite easy to identify. They have the physical and intellectual ability to do the work at a high level, but more importantly, they have the maturity to confidently support themselves.
They make their own operational decisions.
They take calculated risks, and they completely accept responsibility for the outcomes without pointing fingers.
The manual explicitly says that this team achieves significantly more together than the sum of their individual parts. Work is completed efficiently, it hits the quality metrics, and this is the absolute magic phrase for any manager it is done without a lot of stress or pushing by the supervisor.
Both the task and the process are operating at peak efficiency. And this brings us to the beautiful, almost paradoxical simplicity of the leadership strategy in the performing stage.
The supervisor is no longer the hub of the wheel.
Right. Team members communicate directly with each other to solve complex problems without looping the boss in on every email. The leader steps away from daily task involvement to focus on strategic, horizon-level planning.
But the most profound shift.
The team takes over managing its own performance. If someone shows up late or isn't pulling their weight, the supervisor doesn't have to say a word. The team addresses it immediately because the individual is violating the norms established in stage 3.
Which means the supervisor is finally liberated from acting as the policeman. No more playing policeman. That is the dream. The leader actually gets to be a leader looking out for future obstacles, securing better resources for the group, and buffering the team from wider organizational politics.
That is exactly where you want to be.
So what does this all mean for you as you head into work tomorrow? We have mapped out the entire journey. We started with the highly dependent baby in the forming stage, requiring an autocratic hand to reduce ambiguity.
Right.
We navigated the chaotic, rebellious child in the storming phase, where the leader has to break up cliques and salvage the process. We saw the highly capable but validation-seeking teenager in the norming stage, where the focus shifts entirely to building a social contract.
And finally, we arrived at the self-regulating adult in the performing stage, where the team polices itself.
Here is your challenge. Tomorrow, when you log into your morning stand-up or walk onto the job site or open up that massive group project thread, actively listen to the specific phrases your colleagues are using. Are people asking, what exactly is my expected role?
Or are there factions complaining who is actually running this thing?
Or are they quietly, confidently executing the work and holding each other accountable? Use the task versus process framework to diagnose exactly which stage of the life cycle your organism is currently in. Because you can't apply adult leadership strategies to a team that is currently throwing a toddler tantrum. Once you know exactly where you are, you know exactly what kind of management the organism requires to take the next step.
And this raises an important question, a final thought for you to ponder as you analyze your own workplace. If a team is truly a living, breathing organism that matures over time, from a dependent baby to a fully autonomous adult, what happens to that organism when the composition suddenly changes?
Oh, that's interesting.
Think about it. Let's say you have a perfectly functioning, high-performing adult team. The process is flawless, the task metrics are off the charts, and suddenly management drops a brand new employee, a new baby, into the mix. Does the entire organism temporarily regress back to the storming phase?
To accommodate this new variable.
Exactly. How much disruption does one new personality cause to a deeply established social contract? It is a fascinating dynamic to watch out for the next time your department makes a new hire. Your perfectly mature adult team might just start acting like rebellious teenagers again, at least while they renegotiate their norms.
That is an incredibly insightful point. The life cycle isn't a straight line. It's a loop that can reset at any time.
Definitely.
Well, that is all the time we have for today's deep dive. Thank you so much for joining us as we explored the PBM manual and the secret life of teams.
It was a pleasure.
We hope you view your next collaborative project through a completely different, much more strategic lens. Until next time, keep observing your environment, keep questioning the process, and keep learning.